And Ajahn, you're free this afternoon too, right?
Free?
Yeah.
I'm very expensive.
Oh, sorry. You can take Ajahn, and he's busy too. So anyway, we'll leave it to Ajahn then. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And it's very good to spread the books around, because especially one of those books is called Coronavirus. And it's very good in Hong Kong. You spread more coronavirus or the coronavirus, the kindness virus. And that's one of the things which you will notice, that when you go on a retreat like this, sometimes you may think, oh, you know, it's just for you and you don't share anything with anybody else. You take 3 or 4 days off, you have a good time. But what about all the people you live with, work with, family members? How many people will you meet just even on the way home? Even if you're driving in a car, if you've had some kindness here, you will tend to be able to let more people in front of you in the car. So people won't be sounding their horns so much. There won't be so much road rage. I asked Gerald, I think, is there road rage in Hong Kong? Why? I remember one of the stories I was told about road rage in New York. And this two drivers, or one driver, was very upset about another driver and chased him down the streets. And eventually, the first driver had to stop because it was a red traffic light. And so the one chasing him also stopped, jumped out of his car at the traffic intersection, and started banging on the window of this man's car, trying to break the window and get in. That first driver was really, really scared. But fortunately, the windows of a car were quite strong. And so the window held up, the lights changed to green, and so the driver stood in his car, drove off. And then the man who was banging on the window, he thought he'd get back in his car and keep chasing him. But this was in New York. The first man was so mad and crazy with anger, he'd left the door of his car open, the key in the ignition, and the engine running. When he tried to get back in his car, a street kid was already in there first and sped away. So this man, because of anger, he just bruised his hand trying to break the window and lost his car. It was stolen. And he was standing in the intersection with no car and nowhere to go. Sometimes I thought that was kind of karmic reward, because he was angry. And when you're angry, you lose your mindfulness. And when you lose your mindfulness, the next thing you lose is your car. But anyway, you know, that's one thing which I kind of noticed in Hong Kong this time, more than the last time I was here. Okay, last time was over 3 years ago. There's so many more questions on things like anger and negativity. And that wasn't there so much 3 years ago. Now, I'm saying this because, you know, I'm away for a while, then I come back. So you can see changes very easily. And I don't understand why. People in Hong Kong are just so nice and so kind when I'm around. But it's not just that, it's just what you see. Sometimes in this world, you have a choice. What are you going to see in somebody else? Are you going to see their kindness? Are you going to see their badness? And I know you've heard many of these stories, but I was just talking with Gerald just a few moments ago. Every story I say, I'm the one who hears it most times, more than any of you. And also, if any of you have ever read the Buddhist sutras, does the Buddha ever repeat himself? Ready? You bet. And sometimes somebody said to me, I've given so many talks on YouTube, so many books that they said they haven't really done the calculations, but it's probably pretty close. There's more stories and descriptions by Ajahn Brahm than even the Buddha. All those talks I've given over all these years and put them all together. So repetition is natural. And it's also, you may notice, every time I repeat a story, there's always something else added. A little tweak here, a tweak there. It's not exactly the same. And also, it does reinforce the message of those stories. And something like anger and the negativity. And also, that's associated with many of you in Hong Kong thinking you're not good enough. That somehow or other that you're uh, not living up to what's really expected of you. And I think that's a terrible attitude. And the reason I say it's a terrible attitude is made clear by that story of when I was a school teacher. For 1 year, I taught in a high school. And because you teach in a high school, you have a class of kids, I think they're about 14 or 13 or something. And at the end of the school year, you did have to give out the results because people always like to be graded. I think that might be a nice idea here at the end of the retreat. This afternoon, at the end of the last talk, I can give you grades. And if I give you grades, I think because of your conditioning, that might motivate you, or it might scare you and take away some of the essence of what we're doing here on this retreat. But anyway, there was this one kid in my class who came bottom, 30th out of a class of 30. He didn't know that. He knew he didn't do well in his school exams. But when I gave out the report cards, I gave it out to him and said, "No, you've come bottom this year. 30th out of a class of 30. Have any one of you ever come bottom of the class?" But anyhow, this poor kid, as soon as I gave him his report card, his head drooped, his shoulders drooped, and you could see, even only a 13-year-old, the first signs of depression. He was not happy. He was sad and glum. And I could read his mind, not through psychic powers, you just know what it must feel like. What his friends are going to say to him later on. Stupid, dummy. And even worse, what his parents would say to him that evening. How'd you do at school? What's your result? Bottom, ma'am. Bottom, dad. What happened to him? Oh, all his privileges would be taken away. His father would say, "You better not go out playing soccer or watching the TV. You must stay at home, do more studies next year." So the poor fellow was really scared and depressed. I think you all know that I am a kind monk, and I was kind even as a school teacher. So I can't let a school kid be so depressed and unhappy. So when I gave out the last of the report cards, I went to stand by him and said, "You know, you are much better than coming bottom of the class. I really do think that, I'm not quite sure why you took this bottom spot. You should be up in the middle or up the top half somewhere. But I figured out what I reckon went on, why you came bottom. I said there's something in Buddhism. They knew I was a Buddhist by that time. There's something in Buddhism which we call the Bodhisattva. And a Bodhisattva is someone who sacrifices their own happiness so their friends and colleagues don't have to be so unhappy. And I said, I think that's you. I think you deliberately, on purpose, consciously answered all those questions wrong when you knew the right answer, so you could take the bottom position of this class and won't have to inflict any, or you won't have to see your friends getting what you're going to get tonight from your parents. You are so kind and so compassionate. Other people in this class only think about themselves and coming top or middle somewhere. But you deliberately, on purpose, took the bottom position out of compassion for your friends. I said, that's wonderful. I really applaud you. And I said, as soon as this class is over, I'm going to the principal's office and I'm going to recommend you for the Bodhisattva Prize for this year in this school. I actually said that. And he looked up at me. He wasn't depressed anymore. He was thinking, who is this stupid teacher who's been teaching us for such long time? He's crazy. But he giggled and laughed. But I did say the last thing, which was in this school, in our tradition, you're only allowed to take the Bodhisattva Prize once. Next year, let one of the other kids become the Bodhisattva. And just like you know, it was a funny story. It made him laugh. And it took away, the severity of coming bottom of the class. In other words, if you think, oh, life has been really mean to me this year, if you've had a lot of suffering, well done. You've deliberately taken all this suffering so other people in your office, in your life, don't have to suffer so much. And I'll recommend you for the Bodhisattva Prize. In other words, when you look at it in a different way, any different way, even though I'm really pushing the truth a lot there, nevertheless, that little bit of humor and kindness takes away that edge of suffering. And we can look at things in so many different ways. And it's because of those sorts of attitudes that I do recall, praise. I've received a lot of praise and criticism too. But one of the best pieces of praise I've ever got, which I will always, keep with me, until I die. I'm going to die one day, I know you don't like that idea. Should I keep going on for a long time? Isn't that unkind to me? Torturing me? Okay, but anyway, what was I going to say? That, that that I just used to teach in prisons. I taught prisons in many places, even over in Singapore. Taught in prisons there, and in the UK, but mostly obviously in Australia. And I remember getting this telephone call once, and it was one of the prison officers. And he wanted to speak to me, no other monk. So I answered the phone and said, yes, Ajahn Brahm here. What do you need? And he said, I want you to come back to teach in my prison. I said, why? I'm busy. And he said that he'd been in the prison service all his life. That was his career. And he said, I'm not a Buddhist, but I've seen something strange. I'm about to retire, and I've noticed that all the prisoners who came to your class, once they're released, never ever come back again to prison. He said, I'm not sure what you're doing or why you're doing it or how you're doing it, but it works. And I just want, to try and make sure that there's not those prisoners can actually leave jail and have a life afterwards. He was compassionate and kind. He'd been in the service all his life. He said, this was unique. Can you please come back? And of course, I said, well, can I send somebody else? He said, no, we want you. And of course, I couldn't go back because I got so many other places to go, like Hong Kong. But nevertheless, I took that as a beautiful compliment, unexpected, from someone who's not a Buddhist, someone who's not getting anything out of that invitation. But also, I thought, well, what have I been doing? That every prisoner, it seems, who came to my class never feels that they have to reoffend when they leave, and they can get a beautiful life afterwards. And I like just reflecting, on those kind of events, not just using it as praise, but using it as a teaching. And what I did realize, something which you've seen me do here, whenever I see anybody, I just can't see your faults. I'm sure you have many faults, many things you do wrong, many cruel things you've done, much bad speech you may have spoken in your life. But I just can't see it. But your good qualities, oh yeah, I can see those. I can see sort of the beauty and the kindness which you have, each one of you. Even like a simple thing. Just because I finished the last interview before this talk a little bit early, that uh, someone invited me, do you want another cup of tea with condensed milk? Actually, Gerald, I didn't really want another cup of tea, but you wanted to give it to me. I could see that in your eyes. So he ran up to his room, got a cup of tea, and came. And when he was putting the condensed milk in, how much condensed milk do you want? And I took, he was actually squeezing it, and I took the tube and squeezed it some more. Just for fun, not for taste. Because it's something which Ajahn taught me. He said, whatever you do, give it everything you've got. Don't hold back. I think you may have seen that. When I do those interviews, I give those interviews until I'm really tired. Doesn't matter. I can go back up in my room and re-energize again. But whatever I do, I will always give it everything I've got. And that's even, sometimes if our monastery is running short of cash for something, that's what I teach the lay people. I say, in your life, if you're resting, give it everything you've got to rest. Don't go thinking about the work you've got to do. If you're having a shower, give that everything you've got. Really make your body nice and clean. Don't worry about the time it needs, and you may be late for something. Make sure you give this moment full energy. If you're meditating, sit down there, don't think about anything else. Really meditate, give it everything you've got. And when you're passing by the donation box, give it everything you've got. That never works. People have a good laugh, but anyway, the whole point is that just really putting all your energy into what you're doing. In the old days, I used to think, if I put all my energy into what I'm doing right now, just giving this talk, then after the talk is finished, when I have the interviews, I'll be dead. I'll be just so tired. I'll be exhausted. And these people who want to talk to me in the interviews, I'll have no energy left. It doesn't work like that. Like if you give all your energy with a really good heart, out of kindness, out of joy, you're actually creating energy, more energy. So afterwards, you have more, not less energy. However, if I get negative and I say, oh, look, I've given enough already, I don't want to give any more. I'm tired. I want to go to bed. I want to be depressed. That's where depression comes from. You don't put energy into what you're doing. There must be some of that here because a few of you have been meditating and getting some beautiful joy in your meditation, like I keep saying. But some of you, can't find the joy. Goodness gracious. What's going on? The joy is there. Why can't you just see it? Can you see the teddy bear next to me? It's there, you know. The joy is there too. Why can't people see it? I think it may be your poor brains are just so tired. So tired, there's no energy in it. Because there's no energy in it, oh, you can't even see a teddy bear. You can see a stupid toy sitting next to me. What is a monk doing with a teddy bear? Monks should be strict and severe. And sometimes people come into interviews, sometimes they were scared. Oh my goodness, what's this monk going to do to me? In some traditions, monks do hit people. I've never hit a person once, except by accident when I bump into them. Other than that, you have this respect for other people. See the beauty of their kindness. And what people need in Hong Kong, in Singapore, in Malaysia, in Norway, in UK, in Kuala Lumpur, all these places I've been recently, what people need is just some kindness, some encouragement. And if I can see the goodness in you, see the kindness in you, some of you just think I'm crazy. But when you see it in yourself, then the problem is solved. I can see it in you. And when you start to have some trust in me and believe that I'm not just making this up, there's a lot of goodness and kindness in you, then you'll start to see it in yourself. And once you see that positive side of you, then you work on that. You never try to work on trying to get rid of the negativity inside of you. Those of you who try to get rid of your defilements, your poisons, your bad speech, bad actions, or bad thoughts, if you try to get rid of it, you will find you just add negativity onto negativity. It gets worse. To understand what I mean, there's a classic Buddhist story, which I haven't mentioned on this visit yet. Once upon a time, first of all, are you sitting comfortably? Then I will begin. Once upon a time, there was this very amazing empress. She ran the kingdom because she was the smartest in the whole land. And because she was really smart, she came to one of these retreats run by Biff in Hong Kong. And once the retreat was over, she went back to her palace. Of course, I'm making most of this up, but the main story is in the sutras. When she went back to her palace, she found in her absence it had been invaded by this monster. While she was away, this monster had walked into her palace, and this monster was so frightening, was so aggressive, so big and ugly and smelly that all the security who were supposed to protect the palace, they froze. They hid under the tables or in the cupboards or behind the flower pots. They were terrified of this monster. And that allowed this monster to go right into the throne room and sit on the empress's chair. And at that, some of the security guards said, well, this is too much. They came out of hiding and they said, get out of here. That's our empress's chair. You've got no right to sit there. And at that monster grew an inch bigger, more ugly, more aggressive, more smelly, more ugly. And that really upset the security. They said, listen, you better get out now. There's more of us than there are of you. If you don't get out soon, we'll carve you out with our swords. We'll kick your butt. No, it's very difficult being a monk. There's all these words I would like to say. But I'm afraid you get upset and think, Ajahn Bob, you go too far. But anyway, you know the sort of thing I mean. Get out of here. They really were getting angry. And as they were getting angry, every angry word, every angry deed, even every angry thought, any negativity at all, and that monster grew an inch bigger, more ugly, more smelly, more offensive, more violent. And that had been going on for some time before the Empress returned. And what do you think she did? She looked at that monster. It was so huge, so ugly, so smelly. For the smell, I sort of concocted the description. She stank, or rather the monster stank so badly that even the maggots crawling on the monster's skin threw up. They barfed. They couldn't, they couldn't stand it either. But the reason why she was the empress, because she was smart, she looked at the situation and she smiled at the monster. Monster, thank you for popping in and visiting us. Why have you waited so long to drop by? Has anyone got you anything to eat yet? Something to drink? What can we get you? This was sincere kindness. And that monster shrank an inch, was less aggressive, less smelly. And so some of the security, instead of pointing swords at this monster, said, what would you like to drink? We've got English breakfast tea with condensed milk. Whichever will get you that if you wish. We've got peppermint tea. We've got, I don't know what you've got type of tea out there. We've got a coffee. Would you like a latte? Or a capu? That's right, isn't it? Cappuccino? Okay. And so the monster said, actually, I quite like a cappuccino. Would you like milk in there or oat milk or whatever other milk? Do you want honey, sugar? And so they made him a nice cappuccino. And he shrank another inch. So would you like something to eat? So what do monsters eat? One of the guards was so smart, he ordered a pizza for the monster. Because you can get monster pizzas. And then a few of the other guards, they put down their weapons and said, would you like a foot massage? Have you ever had a foot massage, reflexology? It's very good for your health. So he had such big feet, it took about 20 guards to go just down 1 foot. And I gave him a lovely massage. Oh, yeah, just over there. Oh, yeah, that's very nice, said the monster. And every kind act, kind word, kind deed, kind thought, the monster kept on shrinking, getting less and less aggressive, less smelly. And amazingly, soon that monster was back to the size when he first came in. But they never stopped being kind. The monster-sized pizza arrived, beautiful cappuccino to go with it. Some other guards gave him a shoulder massage. Because, you know, those monsters have such big heads. You must have a lot of neck pain. And that monster kept on kept on shrinking until the monster was so small. One last act of kindness, and the monster shrank totally away. That is a story from the Yaka Samyutta, taught by the Buddha, embellished by Ajahn Brahm. I added many things there, like the pizzas and other stuff, but the basic story is there. And that's wonderful to see that, because what that is what we call, what the Buddha called, an anger eating monster. You give it anger and it gets bigger, more aggressive, more difficult to handle, more smelly, everything. I know some of you complain about your mothers. Are mothers anger eating monsters? You give them anger back, they get bigger. You stupid daughter, you ridiculous son, you disrespectful, what are you doing there? If you ever notice, when you give anger back, their voice gets louder and they get bigger. And look at their face, it gets much uglier. So if you look, I shouldn't really say this, should I? If you look at your mother or father like an anger-eating monster, you give them you give them anger back, and they get worse. Is that what you want, for them to get worse? So give them kindness. Yes, mummy. What can I do for you, mother? Yeah, you may have a point, mother. And you go and get your mother. I don't know what she likes, a cup of tea or something, or a pizza, the monster-sized pizza for your mum. I don't, I don't know, but if you give them kindness instead of anger, resentment, the anger gets less. The monster starts to shrink. I've seen that so many times. So that's one of the ways of overcoming the negative in the anger. See the good in those people. Like I used to see the good, the kindness in so many other people, so many other beings which other people didn't like. I'm sure you're thinking, oh, Ajahn Brahm, you live in a monastery. You don't live in the world. Your mother died a long time ago. Anyway, she was English, not Chinese, not Cantonese. But whoever your mother is, anger eating demons, that is the way they're subdued. Not with giving anger for anger, see who's the strongest. You can give the most kindness. And I remember having that discussion with those prisoner friends of mine. They said, look, Ajahn Brahm, we really respect you. We love you coming here. But there are some people who are just, they started swearing, just bad people. And the badness is right inside of them. No way they can be kind. And when anybody says something like that, I always feel, I don't believe you. But being a scientist, we have to prove it. So one of my prisoner friends, I asked him, in this prison, who is the worst, actually the word they use there, the worst dog? In Hong Kong culture, if you call someone a dog, is that bad? Is that one of the worst things you can call somebody? One of them. Don't tell me the others. But I also, I also remember Ajahn Chah's story about being called a dog. Like not like an ordinary dog, like a cur or a mutt, a bad word for a dog. Because there was, when I first went to Thailand, the Vietnam War was just kind of winding down. Actually, it wasn't really winding down. It just the Americans had lost, and the communists had taken over Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. But just before I arrived, there was a U.S. Army base close to Ubon, where Ajahn Chah lived. And one day, one of the soldiers, this Afro-American soldier, was going from the base in a cycle rickshaw into town. And as he was riding in the cycle rickshaw into town, the rickshaw driver passed some of his friends who were drinking alcohol, cheap alcohol, at a roadside bar. When they saw this big Afro-American in the back seat of the rickshaw, because they were a bit drunk and losing their mindfulness, they shouted out, "Where are you taking that filthy black dog to?" They called this American a dog. It was really racist, offensive, everything. But they said it in Laotian, the local language, in the Isan language. And this American, he was just looking around at the scenery. And so the driver thought, this American doesn't know our local language. So he decided to have a joke at the American's expense. "See how dirty this African American soldier is. I'm taking him into town to throw him in the river for a good wash." That's what he said. That's really offensive. But what did this American do? Just look at the scenery, smiling. And they all laughed. And when they got into town, the Afro American soldier got out of the rickshaw and started walking away without paying. And the owner of the rickshaw shouted at him in as best English he could possibly say, "Sir, money, money, fare, money." And at that, the Afro American soldier turned around and said in fluent local language, "Dogs don't have money." And the moral of that story is, if anyone calls you a dog in a restaurant or in a cafe or on a train or something, if they call you a dog and then they ask for money, dogs don't have money. I've never seen a dog with money. So they don't have to pay. You know that poor dogs. Dogs are really nice. I don't know why people look down upon dogs, but sometimes knowing the local culture does help, because in our local town where Ajahn Chah lived in Ampel, all the taxi drivers, rickshaw drivers, they were very poor. They always used to urinate on this wall, and it staggers, very unhealthy. They didn't have proper toilets there. It was just most convenient. So they would urinate on this wall. And they try to put up signs, you'll be fined. You can't urinate on this wall. It's bad for their health. It's bad for the community. You can't do this. And no sign worked until one of these government workers found exactly the right sign to put on that wall. And the sign read, "This is the toilet for dogs." And after they put up that sign, no taxi driver would ever urinate there ever again. so, so sometimes you have to know the right, the right wording to fit that culture. But anyway, when I used to go and visit those prisoners, they said, "Ajahn Brahm, what you say is inspiring, but it's not practical." So I told the prisoners, "Okay, who is the worst dog in this prison?" And straight away they all agreed, this senior prison officer. He was really a dog. And they gave me they gave me this example. He said, last week, one of the prisoners, his wife managed to get a lift to come and see him. She is poor. She hasn't been able to find the time or the expense or the means to come to the prison to visit him. And as soon as this senior prison officer saw that this guy's wife had come, he sent him to the other end of the prison where the PA system didn't work. He sent him over there on some silly errand. And then as soon as his wife checked in, the voice went over the PA system, "Would prisoner so-and-so come to the visitors area? Your wife has come." He never went. They repeated it 3 or 4 times. And then they said, "Where is he gone?" And then they found he was on the other side of the prison. They went to get him, but by the time he got to the visitors area, visiting hours were over. There's no reason to do things like that. And this poor prisoner, the first time he could see his wife in months, and now he couldn't because of this dog-like behavior of this prison officer. And that's what he was known for, apparently, this officer. And I said, well, any of you just meet him a lot? And this one prison officer said, yeah, I have to go. My job in the prison is to serve them tea and coffee, sandwiches, morning and evening, or an afternoon. That's my job. Great. So we had a contest. I said, every time you serve a cup of tea to this prison officer, find out what type of tea he likes, how strong he likes it, how sweet, lots of milk, little milk, how hot he likes it, and find out whether he likes biscuits with it or sandwiches. Find out what he likes. And when you give it to him with lots of kindness. Here you are, sir. I hope you like this. He said, it's going to be a waste of time. Give it a try. And the prisoners respected me, so they did this. When I used to see them every week, how's it going? Hopeless. He doesn't even acknowledge that I'm there. I just put it down, talk to him, and he just carries on doing what he's doing. He 100% ignores me. Carry on. It's after about 2 or 3 months, we got our big breakthrough. He couldn't wait to tell me. He found some coffee, which he thought the prison officer liked, and some biscuits, which he thought he liked. Here you are, sir. I found these biscuits for you and your favorite coffee. I hope you like it. And the prison officer said, He grunted. It was acknowledgement that somebody was there. And that really encouraged him. And I said, look, we've got the crack in the wall. Carry on. And it was true. It was only about 3 or 4 weeks later. He found some tea, which he liked, and a sandwich, which he thought he would like, and gave it to the prison officer. Here you are, sir. A special tea for you and a nice sandwich. And the prison officer apparently turned around to him and said, thank you. That may seem small to you, but the prisoners told me that went along the prison grapevine to all the prisons in Western Australia, that this prisoner would actually say thank you to a prisoner was unbelievable to most prisoners. But because that was spread by the prisoner grapevine, wow, I won the contest, or rather kindness did. But you have to be persistent, innovative, find out what your mother likes, what the person in the causing you trouble likes. And it's irresistible after many weeks, months, years. I don't care how long it takes. Kindness does conquer. A lot of people aren't persistent enough. But if you can do it, beautiful. And what a wonderful way of changing the world that is. Blow somebody up. The problem is they get reincarnated and come back and take their revenge. So that doesn't work. You get angry at someone, a lot of times that you get sick. Have you ever been mindful and felt what anger is like? How all your body tenses up? And this is how that you go into this, I don't know what other chemicals get secreted into your bloodstream, but they're not that sort of good and kind and healthy. You do that to yourself, it's not worth it. There's other ways. Another occasion when over in Perth, and we started with nothing over in Perth as monks, and that's why I had to build. But eventually, we worked hard, we built stuff and inspired people. We weren't lazy monks. We worked our butt off even then. Whatever you do, give everything you got. So eventually we managed to get a city centre. You know, the city centre, it used to be an Anglican church. Their congregation was going down, ours was going up. So we asked, it's a beautiful place, it was on the market, can we buy it? And the Anglicans said, well, hang on a minute. Who wants to buy it? Said the Buddhists. And because we'd always been kind as Buddhist monks and helped out the Anglican church, whatever they needed, we'll come in and help you whatever we can. They said, if it's you, yes, we'll sell it. They wouldn't sell it to many people. The Buddhists were okay. One of the other things I did, I don't know any Anglicans here, about 20 years ago or something, they liked the talks which I gave. They could see them on YouTube. So the dean of the cathedral in Perth, Dean John Shepherd, that he said, Ajahn Brahm, some of my priests, they give boring sermons. You give really interesting sermons with jokes and stuff. Can you come to my church, the cathedral, to give the sermon on a Sunday? With an invitation like that, I said, yeah, I'll go. And apparently he knows his stuff. It's the first time in about 2,000 years that a non-Christian has given a sermon at a full Anglican Mass, or the equivalent to a Mass, Eucharist, I think they call it, on a Sunday. That was me. I said to someone earlier, because they're a TV personality or something, where are they? Can't see them at the moment. But anyway, that they said they love coming on this retreat, they don't have to wear makeup. And I said, I wore makeup twice. That was one of the occasions, because the TV show wanted to interview me, the first non-Christian to give a sermon in a cathedral on a Sunday. So I got on the TV for that. But on the interview, they insisted I had to wear makeup. And it's only to stop you shining or whatever. I asked them, well, has anybody ever refused makeup? And they said, yes. I think his name was, Rory Gallagher or something of Oasis. Does anyone know the Oasis pop group? Sorry? I think Liam Gallagher. Anyway, he refused. I could have been in the same category as Liam Gallagher, but I thought no. The worst thing about that experience, Ajahn Brahmali was with me. He didn't have to wear makeup, but I did. And he was making all these faces at me, trying to embarrass me. But anyway, that was because I wanted to interview about this first person to give a sermon for it. It was a wonderful experience. I must admit, I'm going off track again, but what happened was that the place was packed. There was way past the number of people who should be in there. Standing room only. And the lovely thing also was that no one knew who was a Buddhist and who was a Christian. Shoulder to shoulder, cheek to cheek, because there's no other place to be. And then a couple of fundamentalists came in with signs. This is evil, this is wrong. This is a Christian church. Buddhists shouldn't be allowed in. There's only about 3 of them. And then the other Christians got hold of them, threw them out. The Buddhists could stay in, but not the fundamentalists. We gave a nice little talk, and it was a wonderful time. So anyway, doing stuff like that meant, we could work together, and that we could have harmony. And that because of that, when we needed a place for our city centre and they had a place they didn't need, Yeah, of course you can buy it. So that's our city centre. It used to be a church before. But nevertheless, anyway, that when we had our grand opening, because when you get a new place, you always have an opening ceremony. When we had that opening ceremony, I was asked to organize all the chairs, marquees, no, just chairs and marquees. That's all, yeah, for the big event. And I was told by our treasurer, don't worry about costs. This is a once in a lifetime, the opening ceremony of our city centre. Make sure you get the very best. And in particular, because even though we were a small organisation, we had the governor of Western Australia coming. A lovely man, but he's a representative of Her Majesty the Queen at that time in Western Australia, really quite a big shot. When I got all the chairs and the marquees were filthy, like they'd been in some show up in the deserts of Western Australia. But I don't complain. We just wash them. That's okay. So we washed the marquees, and then the chairs. They were filthy too. We could wash those, but the chairs we had for the VIPs, for the governor and his wife, honestly, not one of those 10 chairs had legs the same length. They wobbled. And I thought, that's going too far. Because I started to fantasize. There was a governor listening to the ceremony and then he'd fall off. That wouldn't be a very good sign. So I rang up the hire firm. It was late on a Friday afternoon. Managed to get the manager before she closed up the shop for the weekend. Those stuff which I ordered is supposed to be really high quality. Look, they're not. Even the chairs, they don't balance. We got the governor coming on Sunday. We need them changed. She was very nice. She said, oh, I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. We'll change them for you. What I didn't realize, this was Australia. At that time, all the workers had left work and they had gone to what they call the office, the start of the Friday night drinking. They'd gone to the local pub. Then the manager apparently went into that pub to see the workers and said, the Buddhists need their chairs changed. Now, these were Australians starting their weekend many years ago. They were not happy. They had to go back to work. They went back to work. But this time I decided, I had to make sure I was there to check they gave good chairs this time. And the truck turned around Nansen Way, where at the end of that road is where our city centre is. And they were still coming quite fast down Nansen Way. They hadn't stopped yet, where one of the men jumped out of the van, out of the truck. He had his fist up. Where's the bloke in charge? I want the bloke in charge. The bloke. I walked up to him. I'm the bloke in charge. I didn't mind being called a bloke. And he put his fist right in front of my nose. You could smell the beer on his breath. That was the most alcohol I've breathed in all my 48 years as a monk. His eyes were red. He'd been drinking and he was angry. Where's the bloke in charge? I had many supporters were helping at this time. They were all looking. Not one of them came to help me. They were looking, what's going to happen next? None of them were going to help me. I didn't need it. He had his fist right in front of me. I was peaceful, kind. I never said anything, because if I said something, he may interpret that the wrong way. I wasn't trying to be superior and a smart aleck. I was just peaceful. And it's a weird experience I will never forget because I had him in my total control. He couldn't move because in order to punch me, I would have to do some reaction. Yeah, yeah, you, yeah, or something like that. If you just stand there and you don't make yourself look weak, you don't make yourself look superior. You're just there. He couldn't do anything. Had his fist up there for about 2 or 3 minutes. And in that time, the truck had parked, and the boss came to see us both and said, "Look, let's come and unload the chairs." And I said, "Yeah, I'll come and help." So we all unloaded it together. No violence at all. That is how to stop anger. Learn how to be peaceful. And other people's anger just gets soaked and just evaporates all away. There is these ways which, as Buddhist monks, we learn and we know. Whenever, oops, it's an hour now. Whenever I did anything wrong in front of Ajahn Chah, you know what Ajahn Chah would do? Would he ever get angry? No, he would laugh. He thought these Western monks of his, with big degrees from big universities, were so stupid. He couldn't believe it, but we gave him lots of humor. One of those things which I did, I think you may have heard the story. In those early days, his monastery was poor. So the only requisites he had, like toothpaste and stuff, was in a big water jar. And people would offer some. And if you needed any, he'd just look inside the jar and found some toothpaste. Here you are. But this day, I needed some soap to bathe. And he had to ask in the Thai language. The Thai word for soap is sabu. And I got it wrong. I said sapo. It's close enough to me. But for Thai people, sapo means pineapple. And I can still see his face now. He was kind. Pineapple? What do you want a pineapple for? To wash. And he started laughing. Laughing and laughing and laughing. I really made his day, I reckon. And he'd tell all the other people, these Westerners, they're far more advanced than us Thais. We only use soap to wash. These Westerners, they use pineapple. And I always found that a much wonderful way. If anyone offends you, don't get angry. Just laugh. A much better response. Okay, I better end now, otherwise it's 10 past 10. I've gone over time again. So now we can have some interviews. Anything else to announce? Okay, very good. So are you going to get angry at me that I went over time? Or are you going to laugh? Okay, laughing is much better. Okay, so sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Very good. Sometimes after talks, some of the audience go, sadhu, sadhu. And I said, that's not the way to do it. If you're going to do it, give it everything you've got. So well done, you did that. So happy meditations and happy lunch and happy interviews, and I'll see you this afternoon. 2 o'clock it is.